Dr. Mel, and this is Dr. Mel's message. I have a wonderful, incredible author to introduce you today. His name is Carl E. Moyer, and his book is called On Freedom and Revolt, a comparative investigation. Welcome. How are you, Carl?
I'm just fine. How are you doing, Dr. Mel?
I am doing fabulous with what the book is about. We know the book is called On Freedom and Revolt, a comparative investigation. Now, we also have some best-selling Nobel Prize winners on the cover. And tell me a little bit about how does all of this tie in?
Well, it came in due to my long affinity with Albert Camus. The two writers that are in the book that I compare, the comparison is between Martin Luther King and Albert Camus. Martin Luther King, of course, he's American, and Albert Camus is French. And the book is basically a civil rights book. That's what I refer to it, because it's got so many things in there that deal with oppression and freedom and racism and war and inequality and that sort of thing.
Now, how did you come up with this idea, and why did you want to write this book?
Well, I wanted to write it because of some things that have been going on in America and going on in America for a long time. For an example, the issue of Afro-Americans' heritage in America. Afro-Americans came to the United States in 1619. And I'm one of them, and we are still fighting for equality and justice.
How are we going to get over this? I mean, really, how are people going to get over this systemic racism? I mean, that's a point-blank question.
Well, now, that was one thing that Martin Luther King and Albert Camus stood staunch as a big monument on, against racism. In the case of Camus, when the French came to Algeria around 1830, they did everything to the Algerians that the white race did to black-skinned people here in the United States. So when the two men stretched out what they believed in, it came into contact, or it came under stress and strain from the French who were in Algeria. They took everything away from the Arabs. They took their property, they took their land. The Arabs couldn't run for office, they couldn't vote, they couldn't do anything. Okay, so Camus saw that and he raised up against it. Okay, he was a battler. Martin Luther King, the same thing happened to him. What he saw here in the United States. Afro-Americans are discriminated against on every poll, in every opportunity, in every job, in everything. You know, white people would make, let's say, $5 to $10 an hour for the same work. Afro-Americans were making $3 or $4 an hour, and they were expected to perform the same way and do just as well as white people did. And everything that they did, or everything that they're trying to do, in many occupations they were not even considered, even though they were top of the line. Take President Obama, for an example. A man from Harvard University, graduated, the president of his senior class, an outstanding student, top of the line student. But when he became president, what happened? The Southerners even came up with a new political name, the Tea Party, expressly for the purpose of keeping so-called Obama in his place. He's president now, and they still going to keep him in his place.
Right.
So that's
one of the most
the
powerful men in the world, right?
Yeah. And how can you be any better than a president, an Afro-American president at that, who was elected by the American people now to be president of the United States? But still, he'd had 1/8 of a time in being president against those people who were against him. And I'll say it again, especially members of the Republican Party. And look at what they're doing right now. They're doing the same thing, the Republicans. Now, I don't know whether you're a Democrat or Republican, Mel, but
I'm neither nor. I vote for the person I want, not the party.
Okay, that's good.
Neither. How's that?
Right now, after Mr. Trump, what the Biden is trying to do now is just 100% opposed to the platform of things that Trump tried to put into operation when he was president.
Right.
And he's getting the H whipped out of him because the Republicans are still great admirers. And one thing that I can't understand, as inhuman, and I look at Mr. Trump as an inhuman person, and I start with how he treated the people from Mexico, how he treated the people from South America and from other areas in the United States. He treated them like dogs, put them in the equivalent of concentration camps, housing is what I would call it. And the Republicans that he had going along with him didn't find any fault. And right now, the riot that was held in Washington, D.C. on January the 6th, supporting a man who did so much, I would say, so much harm to the psyche and to the visions of people trying to go somewhere, especially Afro-Americans whose skin is colored, what they were trying to do. He was not a good president. But anyway, that's part of the agenda of how it goes from one end of our civilization here in the United States to another. It starts from the White House and it can go through the Senate, through the House of Representatives, all the way down to the man who's running a restaurant.
Well, let me ask you this.
We're discriminated against 100%ly. Okay, so
let me ask you, what do you hope people get from reading your book on Freedom and Revolt, A Comparative Investigation?
Okay, what they would get was the message, the main outline and message of the book. The book is designed around the issue of equal rights, around the issue of civil rights. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to get people to read the book and to look at what we have lost as a result of holding on to segregation all these years from 1619 until right now. We're looking at about 400 years of discrimination against Afro-Americans.
That's a lot of forgiveness to do, isn't it?
What I was hoping that the book would involve would be readers of the book to evaluate themselves in terms of what these two men were saying with their comparative writings in the book. Okay, they're on chapter 5, for an example. I came up with, after reading their books, after reading the 12 books of Albert Camus and the 5 books of Martin Luther King. These guys are trying to write, to give direction, to give a message to the world, especially to the United States, of the systemic discrimination and how it has hurt people, not only the oppressed, but also the oppressor, because you can't be a good thinking person and discriminate against another person who's got an arm, eyes, ears, nose, feet, and everything else just like you. It's an inhumane thing to do. We are all created by the Creator, whose name is God, and we were all created with the same things. So how can I be less than you just by the color of my skin?
I agree with that 100%.
Yes.
I mean, it's really, when you sit down, and like I said, I'm a baby compared to you. I mean, you're 90 years old, and I have a very dear place in my heart for children and the elderly. It's like, you're not going to abuse, number one, either of them. But when you throw in racism, like I said, for my granddaughter, who is 5, and you are 90, I don't want her to have to live that life.
Right.
I mean, I don't, as a grandmother, as a human, And when I have the opportunity, like speaking with someone like you, a professor, and for goodness sake, very well educated, 90 years old with a wealth of experience, it gives me chills. And I think we could probably talk for 12 hours and never get to the bottom of any of these issues if we just, started taking, literally decades at a time. And what have you learned from all this? And so my final question to you, as a 90-year-old black male, what advice do you have for all of us, not blacks, not whites, not Asians, us, humanity? What would that be for us?
Okay, what we all should look at, number one, is that we're all human beings, and we should treat one another as human beings and go by what Camus said. I gave a quote that he made, that the main job of an author, a writer, should be to keep civilization from destroying itself.
Wow.
And in the case of Dr. Martin Luther King, he aspired to see America one of these days, before his assassination. And some people are living on to carry it out now with the protests and everything, that we learn how to live as Americans. If we were born here in America, we are Americans. We're not some other race. Black people have been very faithful to the United States. We have not abandoned what we see here and have not abandoned what we have done here in spite of the discrimination. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so Martin Luther King said we have to come together as human beings, and develop what is known as the beloved community. That is living with one another, respecting one another, and treating one another with equality and with respect. This is something that has never been given to the Afro-American community. Respect.
Wow.
And
yes, those words ring so true right now as we go forward, coming out of a pandemic, when we all can really join together. It's about time that we really join together.
That's right.
I mean, does that make sense to you? Because we've got a long way to go, Carl.
Yes.
Society has a long way to go, but you know what? We can do it if
Absolutely.
If we make up our minds to do it.
Yeah, and this is what Camus and both Martin Luther King said. We have to work together. It can't be done. We have to work together. We have to stop working as two separate bodies, two different nations within a nation, okay? And working together. And this is what he said in one of his writings. The writing was The Plague, Plague.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that was a writing that he wrote about what was happening in Algeria. People have to come together, a doctor, a lawyer, a school teacher, an engineer, and a military man. We've got to come together as a group and finally commit ourselves to the truth that God created us all, and we need to stop acting as two separate human creations. The only thing that he didn't create was the color of our skin, okay? But everything else, why should we be treated any less than human beings?
Right.
We deserve to be treated as fellow humans, looking at the time that we were brought here in 1619 and looking at where we are now 400 years later, and the freedom of mind on the part of white people, many of them, is still injurious. Okay, and the freedom of black people as far as the color of their skin, they're saying, well, white folks say I'm second class, so I'll drop back and not do what I'm capable of doing, and not do what the good Lord has given me the skills and the blessings and the grace to be. I'll just be that second-class citizen. And a lot of people have taken themselves, and this is still happening. Black people take themselves out of the battle because what they say, white folk ain't going to let me do that anyway. They're still crazy.
Wow. So we're all hurting ourselves in the long run.
Yes.
We really are. Again, I am speaking with author Carl Moyer, and he has written the book On Freedom and Revolt, A Comparative Investigation. I believe that everyone above age 18 should be reading this book and look at how it can impact our lives and the world as humanity grows and goes forward. The book is available on Amazon in paperback and hardback. And again, I highly recommend this book. And I also wanted to do a little shout out to Strat Advertising for bringing Carl to my blog, because I think this is a topic that is needed to be talked about and in a very open and honest way, like Carl and I have done today. I challenge every one of my audience members right now to get this book, On Freedom and Revolt, A Comparative Investigation. Read it. Send me an email what you think about it. And also, while you're there, leave a review for Carl. Again, I'm Dr. Mel, and this is Dr. Mel's Message. Thank you, Carl. It's a wonderful interview.
And I thank you, Dr. Mel. I appreciate it.
All right.